In the 1980s, there was a drastic decline in the Californian condor species, to the point where there was only 30 birds left in the wild. Today, there's roughly 400 birds left. Had it not been for the conservation program of the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, Californian condors may have been gone for good. I'm sure you've all visited a zoo at some point before, and you've made some wonderful memories there. I've recently been doing research on the topic of zoos, and there's a few points I'd like to bring to attention. Today, I would like to talk about the issues of zoos being in danger, why they must be kept alive, and some solutions to prevent these zoos from being shut down permanently. According to a mid-year survey released by the AZA in 2018, there's been a decline in overall yearly attendances across all global zoos. During the pandemic, the shutdowns of zoos have also caused them many issues. As the LA Times reports, zoos have lost a significant amount of funding needed to keep themselves running due to the lack of people coming. On top of all this, there's been many activist organizations that have been pushing to boycott and get rid of these zoos for a while now. However, zoos provide education about wildlife and conservation efforts. They work with many universities and research facilities that look into these animals thoroughly to learn about their diet, their habitat, their reproduction, and more, which is important in helping conserve their population and to give them the proper care that they need in the zoos. For example, when the Sumatran rhino population was critically endangered, the Cincinnati Zoo was able to have them successfully reproduce in captivity and bring back their numbers, thanks to the research done into the reproductive cycles. Zoos also provide shelter to vulnerable species who can no longer live in the wild. Without these zoos, many of the species of animals we see today would have been extinct by now. Over the last few decades, I'm sure you've seen how many species have either gone extinct or near extinction due to poaching, climate change, or just people taking over their habitats, which has made it hard for them to live in the wild. The Arab News tells of a story of revival of the Arabian oryx. During the 1970s, the Arabian oryx, a species of antelope that lived in the Arabian Peninsula, were poached near extinction in the wild. Many zoos, such as the Phoenix Zoo and the London Zoo, underwent an operation called Operation Oryx, in which they captured wild oryxes from northern and southern herds in order to set up a captive herd in a safer location for them to temporarily live and reproduce there, before being reintroduced back into the wild in 1982. Today, we're now seeing 1,000 of them in the wild, and there's another 6,000 held in protected sanctuaries. Without the sufficient funding, zoos would no longer be able to provide proper care for their animals. If these animals can't either be rehomed or reintroduced into the wild properly, they might be euthanized, which has happened before. Due to the recent pandemic, the shutdowns of zoos have caused them many problems, including, most importantly, obtaining food for some of the animals they have. And a lot of these animals have specific diets, say the panda with bamboo or koalas with eucalyptus leaves. President Chris Peppercorn of the Birmingham, Alabama Zoo says it costs almost $30,000 a day just to operate one. These costs are normally covered in large buy-ticket and refreshment sales, as well as gift shop purchases. But with less funds due to lower rates of attendance, it's difficult to continue running these zoos. Zoos also fund conservation projects and research. According to the AZA website, AZA accredited zoos and aquariums fund over 2,500 conservation projects in more than 100 countries, and they spend an average of $160 million a year on these conservation initiatives. Beyond the world of animals, zoos also play a large role in the economy, and many people lose their jobs if zoos are shut down. According to the San Antonio Business Journal, the cumulative economic impact of 212 AZA-accredited zoos and aquariums across the country result in $16 billion in economic activity every year. The report also states that they employ 142,000 people and provide $4.7 billion in wages and salaries that serve 179 million visitors annually. Zoos are also responsible for a large variety of animals, both under the care and those that are in the wild. Shutting down these zoos would lead to a huge loss in a piece of funding for animal conservation projects around the world, as well as the eventual loss for numerous vulnerable animal species in the wild. On top of all this, shutting down zoos will also leave thousands of people without jobs, and it would impact the local economy. In order to prevent these things from occurring, it's important that we support our local zoos. Ways of supporting these zoos include donations, volunteering, or even attending your local zoo. Donations, especially right now, they're a great way to help during times like these, when there's so little people coming to zoos. And since these zoos depend off, their money comes off of these ticket sales, donating is a great way to help pitch in. Volunteering is also a great way to help in general and in times like these, because so many of the workers have been laid off due to less money coming in, so it'd be helpful to kind of help around the zoo for free. Attending your local zoo, well, that's kind of tricky right now, with everything shut down, maybe sometime in the future, is also a great way to keep them thriving. It's a great way to provide them financially, since again, they thrive off of these ticket sales. Because so many endangered animal species are in trouble all around the world, the best way to help this from happening is to continue supporting and funding our local zoos. This way, the projects for conserving these species can continue and be consistently funded. Supporting your local zoos will also help the economy. According to the AZA website, AZA-accredited zoos and aquariums are also important economic assets as well as conservation centers, and they're not only generating jobs and supporting local communities, but they also attract millions of visitors a year. One of the biggest arguments against zoos is that they're unethical in keeping wild animals in captivity, where the animals are not stimulated enough and they tend to undergo psychological issues from this confinement. This may be the case for privately owned zoos. However, according to a wildlife biologist and her blog, AZA is an independent nonprofit that awards accreditation to zoos that meet the highest standards in animal care and welfare. To receive this accreditation, zoos must meet the guidelines in regards to animal enclosures, social behavior, health, and nutrition. These guidelines are set by animal care experts, scientists, and veterinarians with decades of experience, and this is constantly evolving. This means that zoos who are accredited by the AZA organization are considered to be ethical zoos due to their dedication to animal welfare, and they should definitely be supported. If we continue to support AZA-accredited zoos and keep them open, and give them the funding they need, then we will be a part of supporting numerous wildlife conservation programs around the world, and we'd also be supporting our local economy. If these zoos were to shut down, it would mean the loss of a large amount of funding and research going into this wildlife conservation, and we would start seeing many animal species going permanently extinct. On top of all that, thousands of workers would lose their jobs. Billions of dollars would be lost. The preservation of beautiful animal species, as well as a flourishing economy, is much more preferable to thousands of people going jobless and having to live to see the extinction of more animal species than needed. Today, I've told you about the dangers that zoos are facing, why they're so important in the role that they play with animal conservation, and how to support them. A small donation or a trip to the zoo is all it takes to keep supporting these zoos in their mission to preserve wildlife. I've read far too many about the many animal species that have gone extinct in the past few decades. Northern white rhino, Formosa clouded leopard, Madagascar hippopotamus, the Pinta tortoise, the Yangtze river dolphin. There's so many more, and it's really heartbreaking to see all those photos and read about them. I want to be able to support the humane organizations who are working to prevent more future tragedies. We can't bring back what we've already lost, but by supporting zoos and keeping them open, we can aid in the fight to protect what we have now. Thank you.